Welcome back to Unfolded, the podcast from HARVEY Maps. I'm Adam, and this time we'll be talking a bit more about photogrammetry. The episode is called Losing the Plot. To help me talk about this topic is my colleague Douglas. Douglas.
Adam, how you doing?
Hi Douglas, take a seat.
Thank you.
Join the hot seat. This is the third episode, so it's nice to have a different guest. We had Chris on for 2 episodes. Obviously, we're talking about.
Feeling the pressure now.
You're feeling the pressure, are you?
Yeah.
Just get comfy. We're in for the long run. So this episode, we've called this "Losing the Plot." There were a few other working titles. We had what was the other one? The Plot Thickens.
Yeah.
There was another one I can't remember, but the key word here is plot.
Plot.
And maybe you can tell us why. Tell us why we're talking about plot.
Well, that's what I do, is plot. That is my role within HARVEY Maps as a photogrammetrist, to plot out new data. We use a process called photogrammetry to generate raw data from which to create our maps. So that requires the use of 3D aerial imagery, and it requires myself or another colleague to study that and plot on it, i.e. trace what we're seeing, every little detail.
It's pretty
visible.
Pretty technical stuff, and it's the sort of thing that we've been doing at HARVEY Map. I think Chris and I discussed this in the episode before. It's very much what sets us apart, I think, as a company.
Yeah.
That we spend, I say I can't do it. It's absolutely impossible. Thanks very much, Douglas. But you and your colleague Pete's been with us a long time. Obviously, he knows the stuff inside and out. But this is where we get all the map data from, right?
Yeah.
So
it's the very genesis of the map.
It's pretty niche stuff.
It is.
How did you? This is what everyone's going to want to know. Is how on earth have you done this before you came to HARVEY Maps?
I hadn't, no.
Had you heard of it? Did you know what it is?
The honest answer is no. I had no idea that this was a thing.
I'm not sure many people would.
I guess I kind of fell into it a little bit just by chance, a little bit by accident, really. I started working here on the dispatch team.
That's right. I remember. I've got down. Was it about 2021 or something? Like that?
I found myself redundant at the beginning of the COVID pandemic. I had a bit of time to myself, and eventually got back into the way of working and got a job here. Churning out orders from the web, and I think it was just within a few months or so. I was asked if I wanted to have a stab at that. Obviously, I'd in a previous life worked as an architectural technician, so I had experience on technical drawing and that.
You've got background of working with drawings and data.
It's not completely dissimilar. There's parallels. So I had a bit of experience with the technical drawing, and so I'm guessing that's what led you to ask if I'd.
It's great. You had you were really keen on it, as I remember, and it's Chris mentioned in the previous episode that he'd had a go, but he couldn't do it because of his eyes, and so it takes does take a certain type of person who can see in this sort of way. We'll come on to that obviously down the line, but what I was going to say was so you'd never heard of it. You joined HARVEY Maps. Life, by the sounds of it, was up and down a little bit. So your plot thickened when you joined us.
It did, yes. Nice.
Some segues, mate. Some segue. We're all about it. And how have you found it? Like, it's pretty. To describe it to somebody, describe maybe your average day. I mean,
it requires the use of a stereoscope, so it's essentially a regular computer, a regular monitor. And it has a sort of arm that pulls down in front of it, and it's a viewer that you spend your time. You're kind of not isolated. There's obviously you can still hear what's going on in the office, but you're kind of in your own little world. You're kind of blanked off to what's going on around about you, other than what you can hear. But it's an interesting. You do have to break away from it now and again, just reset the ice,
and it's very. We'll obviously get onto it in a bit more detail, but in your viewer, essentially you're looking at a 3D world.
Yeah.
Right?
So the computer is actually displaying two separate images to me. This is how your eyes work. This is how we in your day-to-day life see in 3D and have depth perception, assuming you have two eyes, of course. Yeah,
that's very true. We've never hired anyone with one eye.
Yeah. So you need two eyes to have depth perception. So each eye is seeing a different picture, but your brain processes that into one 3D image.
It brings it
into
one.
So the computer monitor, without the viewer, is just displaying two separate images. One, they're taken from an aeroplane. There's companies that fly across Britain as much as possible each season, and take as many aerial photographs as possible. So we buy them in strips. So your photographs overlap by, I think each photograph overlaps the one previous by 60%. So you get so there's so much area is on two photographs. So what the viewer does is they're two covering the same areas, but they're taken from a slightly different angle.
Yes.
Like you would see with your eyes.
You're basically drawing a triangle.
Like when you go like that and you close one eye and close the other, your finger appears to move.
Yeah.
You're seeing two different images. So it's two different images of the same thing from slightly different angles, and the computer acts as your brain would. It combines the images,
brings them
into one 3D image.
Got you. It takes me back to my...
If anyone's having trouble sleeping tonight, they're not going to have that.
So you've been working with your colleague Pete.
Yeah.
And Pete, I'm sure we'll have a chat with Pete at some point soon as well, because he's been with HARVEY Maps for 35 years.
Yes, a long time. Yeah.
Just a few more years than yourself, obviously.
One or two.
So how's it been learning with Pete? Because if you've not done this process before, has it been easy to pick up, or how?
Yeah, I mean, Pete's been great. Yeah, it's made everything so. We sort of, I think I spent maybe 3 or 4 months just in a sort of training, not actually working on live jobs. Pete would come in sort of once a week or something like that, and we'd sort of go over the next bit that I had to learn, and then you'd leave my phone devices to practice it and stuff. And then he'd come back in and check what I'd done, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Make sure my accuracy was there and the various different things about time were all there.
He's always had a few stories about photogrammetry, and I've always wondered, kind of like, from my own point of view, having never done it, I always wondered what actually went on under the 3D viewers,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've got your own experiences of things you've seen over the ages. But
absolutely.
I suppose the title "Losing the Plot" is kind of, it's obviously tongue in cheek, because
make it sound like I've forgotten to save my work.
Quite. It's a bit tongue in cheek in that sense, but I suppose the point we were trying to make with it is that it's a really complicated process, and unless you're, I'm assuming, organised, unless you've got a system to trace all the features that you see from a bird's eye view. So how do you manage that? Like how do it must, because you've got to capture everything.
Yes, you see. Literally everything natural, man-made, everything that you can see on the ground has to be marked in some way. We work on a process of, as I say, the photographs we have in strips. So you're working one strip of land at a time.
Okay.
From one side to the other. So you work your way along there. If it's a particularly long strip, we'll break it up into parts so that you're not just doing
constantly kind of
one thing for a whole load of time. You can break it up into bits. And the plotting works. We do 4 different what I call passes over the same section. That's the section of a strip or whatever. The first pass is we call them files. So we've got the A, B, C, and D files. So the A file is all your
cunningly labelled.
Yes, is all your man-made type features, and also for some reason crags are in there.
So man-made features.
I've never worked that out yet.
For everyone listening, would be
so that'd be like your road networks, your buildings,
fences,
bridges, fences, boundary types, things. Absolutely anything that's there
that doesn't exist.
It's not a natural feature. So we go through, plot all that sort of stuff. Generally start with the road network and then build up from there. We'll plot everything. So if a road's a main road, I'll go in and I'll select a main road layer and draw that. If it's a track, I'll select a track layer and draw it. So everything is, when it goes over to the cartographers to edit, they can see, well, that road is that, so that needs to be, along with this colour and this thickness. They can spec it to their needs. So that's the A file. And then the B file we move on is land use. So that's highlighting whether an area is farmland, whether it's pasture or whether it's rough farmland. We differentiate between the two. Types of woodland, you have open woodland and dense woodland. So that'd be more your sort of, deliberate plantations sort of thing.
How easy is it to discern the difference between the land use? The farmland and the rough farmland sounds problematic, maybe. But
it can be. You generally kind of find yourself relying on shades of green. you can tell just by looking if it's a particularly lush green. That'll be like a short kept grass.
Okay.
You can tell if it's a little bit rougher, a bit not quite as lush looking. It's generally probably a grazing field. Especially if it's not too flat as well. Grazing fields tend to generally go up a hill slightly if it's a hilly area that you're. So you can there's various things you can work out. But that always blows my mind that, like, when Pete started doing this, it was black and white photos. So you think how much you're relying on colour as well to do that when you were trying to do that on black and white. It's just.
What are the other? There must be water features.
So the C file then that we'll move on to after that is water features.
Okay.
And things like stony ground, rocky ground.
Right.
We do at that stage as well.
Yeah. Okay.
Scree, that kind of thing.
Right.
More sort of land surface kind of detail.
Yeah.
All goes in at that stage, and then your D file is your contours. All that information's in there. Yes.
The all-important contours.
Everybody's favourite. A lot of what I do is subjective. There's not really necessarily a definitive right and wrong.
In terms of land use. Obviously a road
yes,
road.
Yeah.
But in terms of land use,
features.
It's... And how? So that's a really good point. How do you and Pete ensure consistency between the team? Is there a way to do that? Because on a big project, you'll be plotting half of it, and Pete will be plotting half of it, and eventually, like the Channel Tunnel, you'll meet, and you want to make sure those various shades of green meet and match, right? So
it comes down to the way Pete's trained me. I guess he's trained me to think the way he thinks. I suppose, kind of, when it comes to that sort of thing. How do you know what these things look like? Well, this is...
What are you looking out for? And so it's, as you say, lots of subjectivity and experience would count for a lot in this job. And I think this, linking it to the previous two episodes, again, this is what sets HARVEY Maps apart. We are not simply... running an algorithm over aerial photos that says, if it's this green, it's this, if it's this brown, it's this. Because what you're telling me is that whilst it might be this green, it might be on a slope, and therefore perhaps it's something else. It's not, it's a different type of pasture, or maybe you can see livestock on it, or maybe you can't. So, and I think that's what we always think gives us the best result in that sense. But
everything on a HARVEY map is drawn. We say hand drawn. It's drawn. It's not exactly correct. We use that. We do it with a mouse. It's not that we're hand drawn with a pen. It's done with a mouse, but there is a person moving the mouse. So drawing the things freestyle, I guess.
Freestyle.
Something like that, I guess, would be the
latest Olympic sport.
Contours. I think a lot of people probably think that we generate contours, and you can generate contours often, using various technologies off of models and so on. But we have looked at that, and we've never been able to get anything that's as close as accurate as
things that we need
as our hand drawn.
The mouse part of it. So we're currently looking at one of the old photogrammetry machines.
Yes.
This has two wheels on it. So and I remember Robin Harvey, who founded the business along with Susan. So whereas Pete would plot with a mouse, and he would move the mouse as you would move a normal mouse. Robin used these two wheels, and the only thing that comes to mind is one goes left and right, and one goes up and down, which explains when he retired that we bought him an Etch-a-Sketch.
Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Two little wheels to it, so he could plot up and down and left and right.
That's exactly what it's like.
So there you go. So,
I'm so grateful that I didn't have to do that, because I've tried it. The current setup that we use does have the wheels that you can use. Both Pete and I use the mouse, but I have tried the odd time. I thought, I'll give it a little go with these wheels, and it's kind of very much that thing of sort of rubbing your stomach, patting your head at the same time.
And your feet are going as well, right?
And the feet are going as well. You have there's a flat sort of disc wheel on the floor, which you have to use clockwise and anti-clockwise, determines the height of your cursor when you're plotting. Because, of course, your photographs you're plotting are in 3D, so you have to plot in 3D.
Yes, yeah.
In a 3D space.
Yeah,
so if you're plotting a road that's coming up a hillside, like so, you have to be able to plot, but you also have to be able to follow that, but also
adjust the
move your cursor up at the same time.
And that's what the feet
in order to that's I suppose the main skill in photogrammetry is being able to keep your cursor on the ground level at all time, because there's nothing, the photograph isn't solid.
And the ground,
so there's nothing to stop you. It's I guess you could say it's like a hologram. You know, it's not a solid thing, so there's nothing to stop you being under ground level or above ground level, or
especially as you've got the two photographs that are being brought together to produce a non-tangible 3D vision that you're looking at and trying to adjust. So when you say be at ground level, for you, ground level is always changing depending on the terrain you're mapping.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas for a cartographer, which is the stage after yours, ground level is two-dimensional. It is. Yeah. They are making sense of what you see in two dimensions.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in that short bit of time. Well, I say short bit of time, 8 months, obviously, to your bit. It strikes me that there could be quite a lot of problems that arise.
Yes.
I mean, just in terms of, well, you've mentioned some of them, subjectivity and interpretation. So, does that frequently happen? I mean, are there problems?
Yeah, it varies from project to project. It just depends on what type of landscape you're plotting. You know, you can come across in Exmoor, for instance, we had a lot of fairly deep wooded valleys that had a lot of path networks in them.
Okay.
So, of course, if you're looking down at the top, you're seeing lots of tree canopy. You can't see what's going on underneath that.
You can't see. You can only see the topmost thing,
So you can, and it gets really complicated when it comes to contouring, because, of course, you're trying to contour. You can't see ground level.
Yeah.
And you've got to try and contour on ground level. So it's a bit of a, people always ask me how you manage that. And it's a bit of almost like a Jedi mind trick. You've just got to kind of, the trees, obviously the canopy forms the same sort of shape as the ground below it. So you just have to kind of force your cursor. You have to kind of feel the landscape. It sounds stupid, but you do have to kind of feel your way around. And although you can't physically feel anything, but you've got to kind of feel the shape.
At times if you can't see it fully, you're trying to fill in some holes, and then ready for the surveyors or whoever to go and actually check.
And when we're plotting, we can plot things with a special layer that will highlight them for survey checking. So you know, like that when there's paths, maybe you can see little bits, so you're aware that there's a path going through there, but you can't be certain of the exact course of the path. So I can mark that in a path survey layer.
Please look at.
So then when the guys go out on survey, they'll go and walk that with their GPS units, and it'll give them a line of the exact path that they've walked on.
Yes. Okay.
So they can use that to fill in the gaps between bits I couldn't see, you know. And then you can also assume that there'll be probably streams and therefore bridges, which you can't necessarily see. So, and bridges have to be shown on the map.
Which is exactly why we send them on the ground anyway. Because, as I always think, you're unfortunately spending 8 months drawing something that's already out of date. And that's, hate to lay that to you now, Douglas, but we buy these photos, which at best how old are the photos? A couple of years?
I find it's usually not much more than a couple of years. Yeah.
Sometimes we have to use maybe older photos if it's an area that they've not been able to kind of fly over for a while. But that is one of the nature. We invest a lot of time, a lot of your time, drawing stuff that we know is not up to date. And therefore we have to go out and double check it. But
we should say that when we do reprints, we do checks on the latest.
Absolutely,
the guys will do it just in a 2D to update. You know,
we get the data as up to date as we can. It's just I always find it just an interesting point that we're buying photos. We can only make it as good as the photos we buy. And then we're sending the ground team down there, and that's why we go to all these lengths to make sure that the finished map is as up to date as possible.
That's why we always dense woodland is a good example, because obviously it gets felled. Dense woodland will get felled every 10 years or whatever. So what we tend to, even if dense woodland is felled, we will still show it as dense woodland, because chances are at some point over the life of that map, it's going to be regrown again. They generally will fell and regrow. So,
it's a managed process.
Yeah, so again, you have to keep an eye out. That's something you have to keep an eye out for when you're plotting, is what might just look like open land. You can see the telltale tracks of where there's been...
where they've sent the machinery.
Yeah.
One way we could lose the plot, I suppose, is does it make your eyes go funny? Is that why you have to get up and... Is it hard to spend your time making that dot sit on the 3D land, if you like?
Not really. It's easy to see if you... I mean, I had to go for and I presume other people that have done photogrammetry have got sent off for a special eye test to check the 3D vision. Because as it turns out, not everybody can see in 3D. Who knew? So, but I think people probably think it'll be like one of those magic eye things you used to get. You have to kind of almost cross your eyes, like relax your eyes and cross them. It's not like that. You do just see it in 3D when you look in the
I used to hate those magic eye posters.
Yeah, I could never get into
staring at them, and then all of a sudden a cat would jump out at you, and then you'd lose it quickly.
No, it's you definitely need to break away now, because it's easy to forget to blink when you're sort of you're not confined within it, but you do lose a bit of peripheral from it.
So different to any other role we have here, that very niche work, and very highly skilled as well. I remember Pete told me about, he once plotted a load of boulders. He plotted what he thought were boulders. And as you've already said, you're looking at 2 photos, and there he was. He said he was very young in the job. And he's like, oh, there's some boulders. He drew these big boulders. And I suppose for the benefit of everyone listening, that we only capture, really big boulders that could be used as a sort of navigation feature.
Anything bigger than a garden shed is the rule of thumb.
Anything bigger than a garden shed. Well, this makes the story even better, because then he said he would be plotted these boulders, and then he'd move on to the next part of the strip that you've talked about. And he said, oh, there's more boulders. And he went on and he said, oh, there's more boulders. And he realised that perhaps these boulders weren't boulders, and then he said they were in fact sheep.
Yes.
Is that was that something you had to get to grips with? Pete had been plotting sheep that weren't bigger than a garden shed.
Probably the same 3 sheep, they've just been moving around.
That's, I think, what it was. So what about yourself?
That is important. Particularly that comes into play in the setup that I touched on before, because there's a process in that, the initial triangulation, where you have to select, and usually a boulder's quite a good thing because it's something that won't have moved between the plane taking the next 2 picture. But obviously livestock, sheep, cattle and so on will move, and they can look like boulders.
Definitely not bigger than a garden shed. Sorry. That's a good one.
Yeah, those massive cows that they have in Exmoor.
Exactly.
It's a very important thing to be cautious of when you're doing the setup.
So I'm going to peel back the layers a little bit then. But have you seen anything under the viewers that has caught your eye that perhaps you shouldn't have seen, or that isn't something we normally capture?
Well, they are very high resolution images,
right? And
you do see things. You can see cars pretty easily. You can see car. I did see once. I can't remember what project it was, but it was a really, really remote area. And there was a river running through it, and there was just a single track that had been running for miles. It was the only road in this place. And there was a car parked up. They pulled in, and the road was just passing this bit of river.
Right,
and there was just a car parked up. I just kind of pulled half off the road, and the door was just lying open.
Oh, but you
get flashbacks to The Godfather.
That's a snapshot. All you see is
leave the cannoli. What has happened there?
Oh, was that in Dingle? Maybe was that?
I can't remember where it was, but it just looked very weird. You thought, someone's been.
And of course, you only get to see that one moment. You don't get to see the moment before. Yeah. Although, unless it was captured on the next photograph, you get to see a split second either before.
Yeah, well, it's still exactly the same position. So it wasn't like someone just got out the car and then shut the door. The car was there and the door was open.
Oh,
there was no one about.
That's a bit. I don't know how. That's a bit unsettling.
Yeah.
There was another story floating around about the Wales Coast Path that said you could see the nudist beach. I'm not sure whether this is an urban myth or not, but
I think that might have been part of Pete's plotting. I was the very first live project that I got to work on that Pete assigned me was to plot the whole of Swansea. which is quite unusual for HARVEY Maps because we generally wouldn't plot a city
or
an overly urban area. We would generally do the leisure walking type areas, but obviously with a long distance path.
So we captured that as part of the
Wales
coastal path.
So that was my first job. So I was busy plotting an entire city while Pete was looking at nudie beaches.
What a team.
Yeah, so then of course Luke got to walk along it on his survey, I think. Very much kept his camera in his pocket.
Oh yeah, I do remember that. That's popping up at some point in the survey stories. But so when you spend all this time capturing it, then goes to the cartographers.
Yes.
How much dialogue? So the cartographers are. So you're seeing. Just to be clear, you're the one really in control of what are we going to put on our map. Yeah. You're capturing the features. You're plotting the features, but you don't necessarily have the control of what ends up, of how it looks.
Yeah. What's
that relation? Because I'm a cartographer.
Yeah.
I think I just bashed my microphone there. Sorry, there'll be a big bang at some point.
Keep the noise down up there.
Exactly. I'm a cartographer, and I never used to give two hoots about what you did. I just used to get the files and go, right, time to make something nice.
Yeah. So we start with a sort of shape file, which is basically, as it says, is just a shape, and we have to plot everything within that shape.
Yeah. So you get boundaries to capture all the stuff.
Sometimes those shapes are just what we need.
Yeah.
And that's it. Other times there's a lot more in it, and it ends up getting cut down, I think, is what you're skirting around the edges of here. Dingle springs to mind to this particular instance. It's about the worst case of this I had. Yeah. So in Dingle, and if you remember the opening credits to Father Ted, when the helicopter does that flyover shot, and you get all these little tiny fields that they're not a straight line in them. They're just all these. It looks amazing, but when you have to plot all that, we have to plot the field boundaries. So that's a lot of it, and I'd done tons of this to hand over to the cartographers, only for them to go, well, we don't need all that big just that ends up on the cutting room floor. Good. That's 2 weeks of my life.
Wow. And I'm guessing, like that. So they're making those decisions though based on, I'm guessing, what they could physically fit on a sheet of paper.
Of course,
they're not being made.
It's not vindictive.
Not yet. But so it is very much a case. And of course, there's also the question of detail. So you could be capturing a lot of detail that, when printed, could be a monitor screen, could be shrunk down to,
could be all within the one grid square.
One grid square, and then a cartographer puts a mountain name right over the top of it, and that's a couple of days. The day's work just covered with a bit of text. So these are the challenges that we have at HARVEY Maps.
You have to have that in your mind when you're plotting. At the end of the day, you always have to think that actually. Although I could zoom into an infinite level, I could zoom right into, almost see it in actual size. But there's no point in me.
Yeah. We're just making more.
Get an example of that, I guess. I get to come back to Swansea with my very first project. This is my
burnt into your memory, Swansea.
This is my peak plotting sheep story. There was just outside between Swansea and Lochely.
Could be
Llanelli. That's it. There's Llanelli. There was quite a big estuary.
Okay.
With lots and lots of little streamlet hairs all coming. And I spent a good long while plotting every single one of these.
Douglas.
Wait for people to come in and go, "Whoa, that's very good plotting," but
very accurate, but not necessary.
Not necessary. Okay.
So it's a massive
challenge. Cartographers then had to strip it all out back to sort of about half a dozen sort of the larger streams.
Drag round, fillet blue. Thanks, Douglas. Thanks again. I suppose we should have a look at talk a bit about contour lines specifically, because they are one of the biggest parts of any walking map, but certainly the stuff we do here. And we've been kind of capturing them, well, as you say, whether it's on a computer or a machine or analog digital, we've been drawing them ourselves and not having them generated. So how do we? I mean, I would say, how do we capture them? But I'm guessing it's much the same as any other feature. It's just something you can't see. That's the main difference.
Yeah, when we're doing the contours, so I can show you. I've got a prop here. Let me bring this round.
So, wonder what that was for.
This is my trusty map board.
Yeah.
This pen's going to represent my cursor here. So if this is the surface of the hill,
okay, yeah,
okay, it's it's very unusual to get such a straight.
As in an actual kind of surface, yeah.
Yeah, like a slope. So I'm looking at this through my viewer. I'm seeing this
top down
as a bird's eye view. So what we do for contours is different from the rest of the plotting, where we're moving the cursor height continuously to match the ground level. On this, we lock the cursor to the height that we want our contour to be at. Yeah. So say this is a 45 meter contour, so I lock it to 45, and then the skill is then to keep your cursor on the ground at all times.
I'm with you, yeah.
So I find the ground level, and then I follow keeping that at the one height. Yeah. That's why I'm probably moving up now a little bit, because it's cold in here and my hand's shaking.
It's cold.
But, so I have to come on there and make sure, if I'm out here, I'm above the ground there. So that's right. So I don't want to be coming on and going.
Yes, because you're above the ground that's below the pen at that point, not that way.
And similarly, if you go the other way, I can also go through the board here, but you're then up underground.
Okay.
You're underground here somewhere.
Yeah.
So the trick is to be able to follow that. You're like I said with in Exmoor with the wooded valleys, you've got to kind of feel for although it's not a physical thing that you can feel, you've got to feel the shape of the.
You're tracing a 3D viewed object as opposed.
So that's the skill for contours. Right. Slightly different from everything else. It's all about ground level.
It's all about ground level.
That's the very basic. That's the extreme basics.
I've never heard you swear at your computer, but I'm guessing internally, occasionally you're like, "Oh,
once or twice."
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean that's fascinating. That's how we do it, and that's why it takes so long, I guess, because it's, as you say, it's not a flat. You're constantly getting little inlets and.
Yeah. I always make a point. We always ask what's different, what makes a HARVEY map different from any other map. And I always make a point of, when I talk about the contours, saying, they are at 50 minutes. That's the one thing that you can tell people going, I'm not sure I'm going to like that. But I always make the point of, pointing out that we can actually get more detail on that in a way.
Yeah.
Because we can pick out the little bits in between as well as.
I mean, you and I go to the Outdoor Expo. Yeah. We've been a few times now. It's always great fun. I think it's really good for someone like yourself to do because, you come out of your 3D world and step into the NEC box. But there's all these people who have used the stuff that you've drawn, who are really interested in it. And so to have the two meeting, they probably don't know who they're talking to, I might add, but the photogrammetrist is right here. We get asked that a lot. Why should we buy a HARVEY map over an Ordnance Survey map? Yeah. That is one of the key things we get asked all the time. Yeah. And there's always there's quite a few reasons that we think people should use it. One of them, as you say, is the contours. And when we're at these events, we have a big map wall, don't we? And we can show them it's a blown up map. But one thing that a lot of people don't realise is that there are brown contours and grey contours.
Yes.
Talk about grey contours for us, because that's a really interesting part of what we do.
It's a way of showing when the contours turn grey. That indicates that it's a particularly rocky or craggy or just steep part of a hill or whatever it might be, which just gives our maps more of an intuitive. At a glance, you can look. I'm going up this way. I'm trying to get. Oh, there's a big bit of grey. I'll just avoid that.
I was always thought this was about. Yeah, I think you said it there. It was about it's exposed rock.
Yes.
So it could be steep, it could be flat, but the point is, when you look at the image on the map or wherever it is, you just know to avoid kind of darker contour areas. It's subliminal almost. But.
Yeah, it suggests a ground type where you're going to have to. There's going to be scrambling, or it's not just going to be a straight walk.
So and then how do you capture that information? Who's deciding that? Again?
So that's down to photogrammetry. That's down to peak and eye. So that's in the C file, as I mentioned earlier. That comes under rocky ground. So anything that we highlight as rocky, so it'll generally be, we would draw it as a sort of a blob.
Yeah, okay.
Highlight around on a hillside where there's crags or whatever. We would kind of do an outline like that, and then when we pass the stage where we're converting the data to pass to the cartographers, we run a little program that breaks them separate from the
cuts
rest
the lines basically, and then you can
which allows the cartographers to then colour them separately from the rest of them.
you've done it for a fair few years now. What's the most satisfying part for you?
The most satisfying part, I would say, is probably the contours. When you see that coming together, it builds up. Okay. You see it building up, and you get. It's probably of the 4 files that I've spoken about, it's probably the fullest, and the whole area is covered. You know, you get the area I'm working at the minute, the A file, which is man-made. There's
visually
like one
it probably
track.
Looks the nicest.
Yes. You just get an impression of the whole area. Everything else you're looking at just one part of it at any one time. So I would say that's probably the most satisfying.
And do you like seeing your work printed?
Yes, very much so.
Even though the cartographers have covered it up with their nonsense.
Butcher bits. But yeah, it is nice to see it at the other end. You know, coming out and you go, oh yeah, that looks good. And what's the best project you've worked on so far? The best project is. It's difficult because they all have their own different challenges and pros. But I think probably I would say Dingle.
I was going to say, I'm guessing not Swansea.
Not Swansea.
Not the good people of Swansea. That's not a personal take.
I'm going to say it's probably a good way to start plotting because, as I said, there was not as much thinking involved. You're just plotting exactly what you can see. So that was quite a good way to start. Easy ins, as it were. But I'd say Dingle, just purely for the spectacular landscapes that
it's a nice looking.
We got to have a look at in 3D. You know, I first started in the Blasket Islands, which were off the tip of the peninsula. I started there, and Pete started up in the other corner, and that was really good. It's really sad plotting on just an island where you can, and they're just small islands. You can fit the whole island on the screen while you're working on it. That was really satisfying just to see a whole landmass just come together.
See, from my point of view, the map itself is a really satisfying map. It's a big sheet that we've done there. But Chris and I talked about this in the previous episode, which is the art of cartography in terms of what do we like looking at when we see it. And Chris, maybe it was me. I like coastal things because there's that good balance of blue features and green and white. They're all on the map.
Yeah, but you get to study these landscapes in probably more so than any other person ever gets to. These spectacular landscapes. You could fly over that, and you're seeing it a second, and it's gone, and it's
You're having to go.
A privilege. Times. That's what I was going to say. It's quite a privilege to be able to sit and study these landscapes and take time to.
You must feel like you get to know.
Oh, you feel like
you
you've
go
been
over
there
them 4 times.
Yeah.
Over every file. So.
Yeah, you can. By the end of it, you feel like you've been there.
Yeah. Oh, I've never had a go. I don't think it's too late for me now. I'm not doing it. You do such a good job with it anyway. I don't need to. We get customer comments from our people who order our products, and one of the questions is, where would you like HARVEY Maps to make a map of next? We get some useful ones. We get some not so useful ones. We get some absolute funny ones as well. But so I think a couple have come to mind. The moon. I'm sure someone had a glass of wine then. Australia. Other. I can't remember where. Just stuff all over anything you can imagine. But where would you like to have if you could sit through the viewers and look at something through the viewers?
Out with the UK, obviously we generally stick to the UK and Ireland, but I think probably New Zealand would be quite cool.
Yeah,
I think it's the perfect landscape for our kind of maps.
Lots more moving sheep.
Yeah.
You just want a bit of the boulders moving along, but. No, it's a stunning place. I spent a bit of time there actually some years ago, and
I've never been, but it looks amazing.
Yeah, it was fantastic. I do remember you telling me about the longest railway bridge.
Yes,
and I can't remember the story why, but it tickled you for some reason, and
I think that was in Swansea, and it was one of these ones. It's just like a quirk of, I guess, town planning sort of, and it's just this bridge that. Obviously, they're not allowed to. It has to be they're not allowed to go over a certain pitch on this bridge. So it just means that it's like a huge, big, long thing. But then also they'd sort of gone like a maze around it all. You just
testing
your tracing. Huge area. There's flats across the road that took up a smaller landmass than this one bridge going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Yeah.
Oh, you must see it all under the viewers. Maybe we should have called it Under the Viewers. But losing the plot was a nice title. Anyway, thank you for joining me. Yeah, it was a really interesting chat, and I'm sure everyone has learned certainly a lot more about. I know I have a lot more about photogrammetry.
Yeah. And if not, we'll certainly have a good night's sleep.
Exactly. Thanks very much, Douglas.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Join us again for another episode, and if you don't already, please do follow and subscribe to the channel, and keep an eye out for updates.